What's up guys? Welcome to the new video. I just finished up a sweet spot workout in the basement, but I want to get straight into today's topic on the video, and that is going to be weight loss and nutrition, and specifically weight loss with still training and how to manage the two. This is a topic that I'm actually pretty passionate about. It's something that I have focused on for a long period of time over my life. And I know showing you this might raise a couple questions because I've never mentioned this. I've never really told you guys my story, but I am gonna give you the background story to my weight loss in the next video. I'm just not gonna do it in this one. In this one, we're gonna talk specifically about how to go about losing weight and how to not let that affect your training. So first off, because I have done this for such a long period of time, my very first tip that I will ever give anyone when it comes to weight loss is that you need to listen to many different people, get a bunch of different tips, and then try them out, because what works for me may not work for you, and what works for me right now may not work for me next year. I've discovered over time that things change, your life changes, and being able to adapt is a critical part in maintaining weight loss and just losing weight in general. So just make sure that you try different things, listen to different people, and see what works best for you. That's my biggest advice that I can give. My second big advice is gonna be consistency. I always have found that the more consistent I am, the better my results are, the quicker they come, and it's just consistency is gonna give you the best results hands down. So let's just dive into it real quick. The first key to weight loss is creating a caloric deficit. You know, it's that common saying, calories in versus calories out. We're lucky as endurance cyclists that we can obviously create a caloric deficit really easy through our training, but you also need to optimize your nutrition, and you need to track your nutrition. I feel like if you're not tracking, you're not getting the best results possible. You guys know that I am really number driven. I really like diving into the data. So this may be a little bit too much for some people, especially if you're just getting into losing weight. Weight loss doesn't have to be this complicated, especially starting out. I didn't start out this complicated at all. You know, the way that I started out was literally just cutting calories, and that was all that I focused on. Sure, I counted them, but I didn't weigh anything back then. So if you're just starting out, try to keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate anything. I mean, look for the easy gotchas. Like for example, if you're drinking sodas, I mean, it drives me crazy when people want to lose weight, but they continue to drink these super sugary drinks. I mean, you could save yourself so many carbs, so many calories by just cut it out. So the majority of this video is really going to be focused on the numbers and using the numbers to track and tweak and to get the best results possible while still training. The way that I do it is I like to calculate my maintenance calories and then work backwards to figure out what deficit I want to create. So the first step is figuring out your maintenance calories. Bam! I bet you didn't expect that I was gonna get a whiteboard out on you, did you? There's some classics in here like Euro Trip Unrated. Why would I ever get rid of these? Anyways, back to calculating your maintenance calories. There are so many ways to calculate your calories. It's really hard to figure out which is the correct way. So this is where I'm gonna go back to, you should test this stuff and see for yourself and figure it out on your own. But there are a ton of equations. There are a ton of calculators online. You just need to make sure that you're putting in the correct data. Here's an equation that I'm gonna give you guys for this video, but this is not the only way to do it. This equation is your current body weight times 12 is gonna equal your current maintenance calories. I've tried a couple different ways to calculate this myself. I have calculated my basal metabolic rate, which is the amount of calories that you need to just be alive if you never got out of bed that day. And then I've added some calories based on my activity. But I work an office job, so I don't really do that much stuff. If I was a construction worker, my maintenance calories would reflect that I had a more active job. So that's why it's a little bit hard. You could go and use a BMR calculator, but you're gonna have to add some calories in for whatever your daily activities are. I'm not talking about your workouts in that. That's why I'm giving you guys the equation of your body weight times 12, because it's a good starting point. Now, if you do work a more active job, you may want to multiply it by 13 or 14, or maybe if you're really inactive, maybe even come down to 11. But I wouldn't go there yet. I would start at 12 and then just see how that works for you. Now that you have your maintenance calories, that's great. You could say to yourself, okay, all I need to do is cut out some calories. That will make the caloric deficit and I'll lose weight. And sure, you can do this, and I did this and was extremely successful for a long period of time. But as I've gotten closer to my goal weight, I've wanted to fine tune that a little bit more. So what I do from here is I actually calculate my macronutrients, which is protein, fat, and carbs. And so this is the way that you calculate that stuff. The first thing that you're going to calculate for your macros is going to be your protein. Now, typically you want to be in a range of 0.8 to 1.25 grams per pound. Personally, I like to do 1 gram per pound. I just feel like that's a pretty good solid number. Your fat, you want to be 0.35 to 0.45 grams per pound. And then your carbs is whatever is left over. We're going to calculate that, and I'm going to show you what I mean by that in just a second. Let's use an example and actually calculate all this out. We've got our friend Bob here. Bob currently weighs 180 pounds. We're gonna say that he needs 180 grams of protein. When deciding like what ranges to use here, it's really just kind of up to you. Maybe you don't eat a lot of fat foods, and so you can go on the lower end of it. That just means you're gonna have more carbs. So we're gonna put him at the dead center at 0.4. So 0.4 times his body weight. I can totally do math, but since this is all on video, I don't want to do math wrong and then you guys make fun of me. He's gonna have 72 grams of fat. And then his carbs are what's left. So what do I mean by that? We're going to see how many calories each of these are, and then the rest is gonna be dedicated to his carbs. So 1 gram of protein is equal to 4 calories. 180 times 4 is equal to 720. So that means he's eating 720 calories worth of protein. And then 72 is actually times 9, because 1 gram of fat is actually 9 calories. That's 648 calories. Bob's body weight times 12 is equal to, so Bob can eat 2,160 calories a day and maintain his weight. So now we want to subtract these numbers from that to figure out how many calories he has left for his carbs. Bob has 792 calories left for carbs. We're gonna divide that by 4 because a carb is worth 4 calories. 198 carbs. If Bob eats this way, he's gonna maintain his body weight of 180. So let's say Bob wants to lose some weight. All he needs to do is lower his caloric intake from the 2160. So this is where you really start to tweak things. The easiest way to make that deficit is to remove some carbs. Now, how aggressive you want to be is really going to be up to you, because this is where it really affects your training and your recovery. So let's say Bob's in his off season and he's doing a lot of easy base training. He can be a little bit more aggressive because he doesn't have any intense workouts. So if he wanted to make a bigger deficit and take away more carbs, he definitely could do that as long as he was still able to make it through his workouts. It obviously gets more complicated if you're doing more intense workouts. What we haven't taken into account on these numbers is Bob's workouts and how many calories that he's burning through his trainer road trainer sessions or whatever workout plan that he's doing. If Bob just eats his maintenance calories of 2160 but continues to work out 3 or 4 days a week, he's creating that caloric deficit through his workouts if he doesn't eat those calories back. So that's one way that some people choose to do it, is eat at maintenance and then just let those calories be burned off through their activity and not eat them back. What I did in order to continue to lose weight and still be able to focus on my training and not creating too big of a deficit so that I could still do my workouts and not be hurt during my races, is that I didn't make that deficit huge. So if I did a workout where I burned 600 calories, I might choose to eat some of those calories back. Basically what I would do is I would plan to eat at maintenance level and then add calories in based on my workout and how hard it was gonna be. A big thing that I believe in is not dieting while on the bike. Now throughout the week, a lot of my workouts are an hour and a half or less, so I don't really need a lot of fuel to get through those workouts. Sometimes you do if maybe they're shorter, intenser efforts, but I was able to fuel most of my workouts just through regular eating throughout the day, so it wasn't super important to eat while riding. But on the weekends, when I would do my longer endurance rides, I for sure needed to eat calories in order to be able to survive on those rides. There was a period of time where I started doing a lot more centuries on the road. This was quite a few years ago, and I was amazed by how many calories I was burning, and I really needed to lose about 20 pounds at that time. And I was just focused so much on the calorie burn that I didn't want to eat very much during the ride. And I was really focusing on eating as little as possible. And I continued to bonk. Every single time we did one of these long rides, I would bonk. And then I would go home, and because I felt so terrible, I would eat half a pizza. So guess what? I never lost any weight doing this, and I continued to have crappy rides because of it. So that's why I believe you shouldn't diet while on the bike. You should fuel those rides and make that caloric deficit later after through eating regularly through the day. Or there are some times where maybe you need to eat all those calories back because you have another hard ride the next day. What I'm getting at is that the greater the caloric deficit you create, the more that it's going to affect your training and the more that it's going to affect your recovery. So you're really trying to balance the two. You got to balance that deficit versus your training and your recovery. Obviously, the bigger the deficit, the more weight you're going to lose, and maybe the quicker you can stop dieting. As we're getting into the off season for most people right now, that's why a lot of people choose to focus on the weight loss. It's because it's a great time because, like I mentioned, you don't have intense workouts. So it makes a lot of sense to start that right now. I started dieting around April of this year, which is really when I start getting into some really good training. And I actually lost 10 pounds within about a 2-month time range. You have to really start to listen to your body. And I've noticed that the more that I've trained and learned to listen to how I'm recovering and how I feel, it became a lot easier for me to manage those numbers, manage my macros, and focus on fueling when I needed to fuel. If I just felt run down, then I would not go into a deficit that day. And when I would get to weeks that were race weeks, I would not be in a deficit at all that week. At the start of the week, I'd probably kind of start at maintenance, and then actually towards the race, I would build up to go a little bit above that because I wanted to make sure that the glycogen in my muscles was topped off. Now, speaking of that, there were a couple times where I definitely dipped too low. And I started to feel that and recognize what that felt like. I literally felt depleted. I noticed it on my rides and I knew exactly what to do, and that was to start eating again and to fuel back up. Now it's up to you to decide how big of a deficit you want to make. And to me, the key is going to be tracking, because that's how you're going to know if something's working. But unfortunately, we have all this science behind losing weight. But when we go to track it, it's like everything just goes up in the air, because you may get on the scale today and you lost 2 pounds, and then tomorrow you gain 3 pounds and you didn't do anything differently. When you're stepping on the scale every day to track your progress, the first thing that I would recommend is don't compare your weight day to day to day. You need to compare it over a larger time frame. So month to month is fine, but even in some cases, if maybe your deficit is very small, you may even want to compare it over a wider area, like 3 months. There are several things that are not related to your caloric deficit that will cause the numbers on the scale to go up. A big common one that everybody probably knows is salt and water retention. You know, if you eat a lot of sodium, your body retains a lot of water. Some other things that can affect it too is if you eat late the night before your weigh-in. So if you normally eat at 6 p.m. and maybe you have to eat at 9 p.m., your body hasn't digested that as it normally would have to compare it from the day before. If you weigh in earlier than you normally do, same thing as eating later. If you weigh in normally, your body hasn't had as much time to digest. And then if you're strength training and breaking down muscles, it could actually affect the numbers on the scale. Those muscles are going to break down and start to absorb nutrients and cause them to retain weight as well. That's something that I have particularly noticed as well. If you eat more carbs, your body's going to soak those carbs up. So I've seen this happen a lot, is that you may go out and just do a crazy ride or race, and then you fuel up, but you're still in a deficit, and you think, man, I'm going to lose so much weight. But the next day on the scale, the numbers are up. Your body's just absorbing all that stuff and it's holding on to it. That has been extremely common for me. Anytime I go to a race, even though I'm probably in a deficit, I actually gain weight. And then a couple days later, that quickly falls off. It's just my body holding on to that stuff. And then a common one that you'll hear time and time again is that stress will make you gain weight because your body releases cortisol. The biggest thing that has helped me the most is detaching my emotions from the number on the scale. I think that's where a lot of people struggle to continue with a diet, especially when their numbers are fluctuating, is that it's so easy to look at that scale and basically put a bunch of self self-worth in the number, but you have to remember all the things that cause that number to happen. It's not just the caloric deficit, unfortunately. And I look for the patterns in those numbers. Like the example I just gave you about knowing that I'm gonna gain weight after every race. If I know that, when I weigh that day after the race, I'm not as let down. I don't feel as bad. So by detaching my emotions from the number on the scale and looking at it as kind of like a science experiment has helped me the most. When I have a consistent period, that I see results, and that motivates me. The main key that you guys need to know is the bigger the caloric deficit you create, the more you affect your training and your recovery. So use that to test out what numbers work for you. I would start off small and see how that feels. I think that's better than starting off really big and possibly putting yourself into a little bit of a hole and then trying to dig out. The main goal to make this work is to constantly be assessing yourself, assessing how you feel during your training, how you feel afterwards, how you feel day to day. And then, like I said, make sure you're fueling your big rides. Don't skip out on eating food when you're riding. You don't want to bonk. I hope this information was helpful for you guys and that it wasn't too overloading, but I wanted to give you guys my tips. Like I said, the key is controlling the caloric deficit. Don't have a huge one if you're in the middle of your season, or don't have one at all is really the preference. But if you want to try to lose weight and still try to race, like maybe you feel like you could lose a couple pounds really quick, or you just have so long to go, then make that deficit. Just tweak it where it's not really affecting you that much. If you guys have any questions, you can leave them down below. I will try to answer them for you. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you on the next one.